Hello everybody. Today I'm going to be reading The Alligator Baby by Robert Munch. This baby sure does get into a lot of adventures. So let's see what happens. One night, Kristen's mother woke up and yelled, "A baby! A baby! We're having a baby!" She's looking at her tummy. Kristen's dad jumped up, zoomed around the room, got dressed, and grabbed Kristen's mother by the hand. They ran downstairs to the car and drove off really fast. Vroom! Unfortunately, they got lost. They didn't go to the hospital. They went to the zoo. See? Zoo. But it was okay. Kristen's mother had a lovely baby. Then they drove home and knocked on the front door. Blam, 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 blam. What could it be? Kristen opened the door, and there was her mother holding something all wrapped up. "Kristen," she said, "would you like to see your new baby's brother?" "Oh, yes," said Kristen. So Kristen lifted up the bottom of the blanket. She saw a long green tail and said, "That's not a people tail." Sorry, Tank wanted to get in the video. And then she lifted it up and saw in the middle of the blanket and saw a green claw and said, "That's not a people claw." Kristen lifted up the top of the blanket and she saw a long green face. "That's not a people face. That is not my baby brother." "Now, Kristen," said her mother, "don't be jealous." Just then the baby reached up and bit Kristen's mother on the nose. She got, "Ow!" Then the baby reached up and bit her dad on the nose. He got, "Ow!" "That's not a people baby," said Kristen. "That's an alligator baby." "Oh, goodness," said her mother. "We've got the wrong baby." Here they are coming back home. Let's see what other kind of adventures they're going to get into. So Kristen put the alligator baby into the fish tank, and her mother and dad drove back to the zoo. They came back in about an hour and knocked on the door. Bam, 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 bam. Kristen opened up the door, and her mother said, "Would you like to meet your new baby brother?" And Kristen said, "Oh, yes." I wonder what kind of baby they brought home this time. Kristen lifted up the bottom of the blanket and saw a fishy tail and said, "That's not a people tail." Kristen lifted up the middle of the blanket and saw a flipper and said, "That's not a people flipper." Kristen lifted up the top of the blanket and saw a face with whiskers and said, "That's not a people face. That is not my baby brother." "Now, Kristen," her mother said, "don't be jealous." Do you see the cat smiling? It smells the fish. It's not good. Just then the baby reached up with its flipper and flapped her dad's face. Whap, 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 whap. He got, "Ow! It's a seal baby. We've got the wrong baby." So Kristen put the seal baby in the blanket, and her mother and dad drove back to the zoo. Kristen's laughing. Even the cat's laughing. They came back in an hour and knocked on the door. Blam, 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 blam. They said, "Kristen, would you like to see your new baby brother?" "Oh, yes," said Kristen. She lifted up the bottom of the blanket and she saw a very hairy leg and said, "That's not a people leg." She lifted up the middle of the blanket, and she saw a very hairy arm, and said, "That's not a people arm." She lifted up the top of the blanket. She saw a very hairy face, and said, "That's not a people face. That is not my baby brother." "Now, Kristen," said her mother, "don't be jealous." Then the baby reached up with its feet and grabbed her mother's ear and her dad's ear, and they both yelled, "Ow! It's a gorilla baby! We've got the wrong baby!" "Let me do it," said Kristen. So her mother and dad put the gorilla baby on the chandelier in the living room, and Kristen went off to the zoo on her bicycle. You see it hanging off both ears? First, Kristen looked in the snake cage. No people babies. Then Kristen looked in the wombat cage. No people babies. Then she stopped and listened. From far away, she heard, "Wah, wah, wah, wah." "That's more like it," said Kristen. She followed the sound. It was coming from the gorilla cage. Oh no. Did you see some of the monkeys coming out? Right here. Kristen looked at the mommy gorilla and said, "Give me my baby brother." The gorilla jumped back and wouldn't give the baby back at all. There's some monkeys escaping. Then the people baby reached up and bit the gorilla on the nose, and the gorilla yelled, "Ow!" and handed the baby to Kristen. Kristen jumped on her bicycle and pedaled home. Now that the gorilla has a boo-boo on his nose. Kristen knocked on the door. Blam, 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 blam. When her parents opened it, she said, "Would you like to meet your new baby?" Kristen's mother lifted up the bottom of the blanket and said, "Look, people legs." She lifted up the middle of the blanket and said, "Oh, look, people hands." She lifted up the top of the blanket and said, "Look, a people face." Kristen's mother picked up the baby and gave it a big hug. Her dad took the baby and gave it a big hug. And her mother said, "Kristen, Kristen, you got the baby back. Good for you." "But what are we going to do with all these other babies?" yelled Kristen's dad. "There's a seal baby in the bathtub, and an alligator baby in the fish tank, and a gorilla baby hanging from the chandelier. We should take them back to the zoo." But Kristen looked out the window and said, I don't think we'll have to worry about that. Do anything at all." Look what happened. They do not look happy. And everything was okay until Kristen's mother had twins. The end.